Awesome. So Shannon, over to you. We'd love to hear about your journey from you had a very amazing career in industrial engineering spanning about 6 to 7 years in
7 years.
Intel, and would love to hear how you transitioned out of that into finance and then skyrocketed to become a CFO.
Yeah, so I started my career, as Mala said, as an industrial engineer. I was in a bunny suit in semiconductor manufacturing at Motorola when they used to have semiconductor manufacturing, and then at Intel. And actually, at Intel, it was when I kept, obviously, I'm not your typical engineer. When you think engineer, you don't usually picture me. But similar to what Tammy was saying earlier, and I used to get also too, I'm an extrovert and a people person, but I am a problem solver at heart. I love the tech, I love the math as well. And I kept getting tapped by the strategy organizations and the finance organizations as who can be that rep from the engineering team to help them figure out, cost savings projects or, introduce new technology or new process and so I just found that fascinating, and I started learning about the business of the business, not just the product, not just the manufacturing.
And this was at Intel?
This was at Intel, and it fascinated me. And so that actually encouraged me to go ahead, and I got my MBA, again, because I was like, oh, education. When I grew up in my house, education was the way you go do anything. And so of course I got my MBA, and then after I got my MBA, I decided to change careers and go out of engineering and I went to and started financial consulting. And
you started a financial consulting company?
No, I did not start my own. No, but I did start my own company, but that was after I was a financial consultant. But I went into worked for a boutique finance and accounting consulting firm, and mainly for manufacturing clients. But again, being able to really relate with an empathy level that nobody in finance had to the product side of things, to the engineering side of things, from the technical perspective, from a customer perspective, even of who the users were of these highly technical products. And so really found my niche, I would say, working at the different clients that I was put at as a financial consultant, and to be able to translate the financial strategy, because really the way I see it, and again, this is the engineer in me at heart, is the finances are really the story of what's going on within the operations. And so much of finance has changed over the past, especially the past few decades, thank goodness. But it used to be just talking about what used to happen versus actually companies now, and this is what I really do with the companies that I work with now, is using finance as a way to tell all the possibilities of what can happen, and to tell that forward-looking story, and making sure that the day-to-day operations of the business are directly connected to the finances and vice versa. So looking at it, what should we invest in? Where can we grow, versus always looking at it, oh, that's a spend or that's an expense, but more of, if you think about it as, okay, I'm investing heavily in R&D, well, why aren't my sales growing? Well, we need to invest in that. How are we investing in that, right? And making sure you've got the appropriate ratio of people, process, technology within the company, and in order to meet the company's goals. And so that's how I was looking at it, and that's what made me a successful financial partner.
It's fascinating. I've never seen a finance from that lens of being able to tell the story of the business and to be able to predict or to be able to support the future of the organization, which is indeed the case, especially if you work in SaaS companies. Absolutely. The budget and the metrics for revenue and everything comes from the finance team, so that you can then drive towards those numbers.
Exactly.
As a product leader, which is what I've done in the past.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but then just the MBA gave you those skills, and then you learned on the job.
I mean, well,
it seems like such a drastic switch to me.
Yes and no. I'm trying to say this without, I mean, as an engineer, we're all comfortable with math. We're all comfortable with numbers. We think in systems. We think logically. And when you go into finance, and especially I would say operational finance, not creating new financial vehicles, and going into like highly regulated spaces, or getting like I would say the real finance for finance type stuff. But when you are in there in the day-to-day business, it's pretty straightforward if you look at it as as a systems thinker and look at it as a connected system. Then it becomes fairly straightforward. And if you know what to look for, again, which is what I've been able to essentially build my decades of a career on. And the thing that I love and stepping into, and I have had a very crooked path to where I am, is really, it's that problem solving and making that order out of chaos, which again is back to my roots as an industrial engineer, as a manufacturing engineer. Our whole idea is, our whole role in the organization is to optimize everything.
So if you, I don't know if you were here earlier, but when you're going to be CMO, you basically need to master product marketing, demand generation, and branding, right? At a very high level. That's what the previous CMO was telling us, or at least a couple of those verticals. What would it be in finance?
In finance, I actually see the future, and it's been migrating this way, but you've seen this with several companies, large companies, like, for example, even Salesforce. They have a combined CFO and COO, where the pressure is really on for the future of finance is to truly understand operations, understand the customer, understand what, not just be able, again, looking back, but being that business partner and that enabler to look forward.
So if you're going to be a CFO,
yes,
you have to master the craft of being able to predict the future. And you need to be
AI comes in.
And you need to be able to understand the operations of the company, as well as the customers.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, that's a tall order.
It is. It is. And that's why you're seeing, there have been a lot of articles written lately about like even CFO turnover within companies is up, it's like 2x of what it was last year. And because again, boards and executive teams are demanding more. And the old guard, they were, big four CPAs, they could report the books, super clean, all the accounting, no question whatsoever. But they were not in that room when they're talking about starting new markets, when they're talking about different monetization models, when they're talking about a new product offering that is going to completely, open up a different vertical, for example. And with the pace of innovation, which is a topic that's been a through line all day today, you need to be able to understand what the impacts of that are, and be able to ask those questions and be that partner at the table to say, oh, but what about this? But have we thought about that? And again, asking those intelligent questions, but know enough to ask those questions.
How is your performance measured as a financial leader in an organization?
Well, the financial performance of
the company.
Yeah. You're ultimately, which also too, to me, I never understood how CFOs could get away with only looking at the past. I always look at it from an owner perspective and looking at it, if this is telling whether I'm doing a good job or not. Do I have direct control over all of these numbers? Not direct, but again, it's about using your people skills and using your knowledge of the business and making sure that you are partnering with product, making sure you're partnering with marketing, making sure, you're partnering with all of the different functions that are critical, that are actually driving those numerical results that, yes, they're tallying, and making sure you're partnering with them to make sure that what they're working on today is going to be reflected in your performance results next quarter, next year.
And the other interesting thing I see about CFOs is you have the CIO function reporting into you most of the times. Like, how did that evolve? And I mean, I don't think all CFOs are technical like you. And how do you manage a CIO and CISO function?
Well, you hire people that are smarter than you and let them give you lots of great recommendations. And I think that, again, also people up here have been sharing about their leadership. I mean, it is a lesson in humility, and it's a lesson in leadership, though, to be able to be secure and humble in yourself, to hire people that are smarter than you, especially in areas where you don't have expertise.
But what's the evolution, you think, in organizations where the CIO function reports to the CFO?
I think it's seen as an opportunity for cost control. I also see it's...
But isn't marketing that way too?
It is. Actually, no. I see marketing as, if you don't have good marketing today, you're not going to have any sales 6 months from now.
Right.
Not all CFOs think that way, by the way. But I think it's also risk, because that's where the CFO essentially owns risk. We usually own, I was just talking about the insurance policies and the risk analysis, risk mitigation plans. And I think that there is, especially in the age of AI, there's a lot of risk that sits
So do you have lawyers who work for you who help you with that?
Yes. And actually in my last full-time CFO role, I had HR, IT, and legal all reporting to me as well. So again, I hired very smart people who, provided their expertise in what we should be doing. Again, ultimately, it was my job to look across all of those things and do what's best for the business and what our goals are for the business.
So now, with all that context, how is AI changing your job?
Oh my gosh. Well, to start with, as we were just talking about risk, it's added a level of risk that, as we were just talking about, it's wild, wild west right now. The laws haven't caught up. The insurance hasn't caught up. It's right now. It is, everybody's making it up as they go along. A couple things that I have been looking at it as a global perspective. One, because most of the companies that I look at, that I work with as a fractional CFO and COO, is, even if they are only in the US today, they do have aspirations to go globally. And so again, you need to pay attention to Europe. You need to pay attention to Asia, to Africa, to all the other areas, that all the other countries, and what are they doing? Even if the US hasn't caught up, you need to look at what is already in place and make sure that we don't self-select out by not putting certain policies in place or certain controls in place, and trying your best to mitigate those risks ahead of time, but staying agile and being able to adjust to what's coming out in the industry. And so I would actually say the biggest risk is, one, how do you put guardrails in place, but not put the guardrails either too close or too high that you limit innovation. And so I feel like that's the CFO's job right now, is to really balance those two and make adjustments almost on a daily basis, depending on new technology that's come out, new cybersecurity that's been violated, new, whatever is going on in this environment that we're living in at the moment, that is just evolving at an exponential pace. that how do you keep up and, like I said, still allow the company to innovate
I think
and
that would
protect
tell
from
me
risk?
why. It's like a clue that you're saying you're in charge of all the compliance and risk, and that's usually a CISO and CIO function, which is probably why it reports into the CFO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about the tools that are being created to help you with your job? Like we have a investment in a company called Combinedly.
Mm.
They're just killing it.
Oh, wow.
They are, well, they say they help an accountant, but I think they automate an accountant,
Okay.
right? Do you see a lot of those sorts of tools?
There is so much out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to evaluate as much as I can. I'm all for AI. I want to use AI as much as possible. I've always been under the philosophy of, like, let's automate as much as, let the tools do as much as the tools can do, and leave the humans for the human stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff that humans really do well. And I mean, way back in the day, I was doing RPA with my teams, and
Yes.
when that all came out, I was like, all right, let's automate as much as possible. So I am 100% for it. And I'm trying to get my hands on as much as I possibly can to see what works, what doesn't. Again, using most of the large LLM models, that, again, like we've said here, they're probabilistic. In finance, you need to be deterministic. And so being able to figure out how to use the compute power and the data analytics power as much as possible to automate as much as possible, where it leaves more time for people within the finance team and within the organization to notice trends, patterns, to take all of those patterns that are coming out of AI that they're telling us, to be able to have better decision making. Whether it's, oh, maybe we should rethink pricing in mid-market because we're seeing, these trends or those trends, and being able to use that. So, but yeah, I'm all for automating as much as we possibly can.
So typically in your organization, do you have like somebody in your IT team or someone experimenting with these tools to see how you can optimize? What's a way in which my founders can get to a CFO and say, please, can you give my product a chance?
So what I would say, and that is a great question, and the startups that I do work with that are going into the enterprise space, I would say get your hands on it. I was again, I worked in enterprise as the decision maker who, I have to pitch this to my CFO or to my VP finance before we can get approval for this budget. But I would say get your hands on somebody like me if you are. But what I would say is, if they don't know right away, or they haven't, or they're, either sandbox type environment, can we get, whether it's a dev environment that they can carve out for testing, whether, a test environment, some type of separate environment that they can have experimentation. And I would also emphasize not necessarily so much about that people are getting really sensitive about cutting headcount. Again, I would focus on the problem you're trying to solve. And I think people are misreading the whole, we're just going to cut headcount so we can have AI do everything. If AI were able to do everything, I think people would be investing. They wouldn't be cutting, because that's what happens. People get excited about its growth, right? But that's not what happened. I think they're cutting people so they can invest in infrastructure for AI. This is Shannon's independent opinion, not affiliated with anyone, if I can say that disclaimer. But my perspective is, like I was just sharing with Mala, let everything be automated as much as it can be automated, which will free up your people to be more strategic, to think, to have your finance person talk with the product person, really talk about what's coming up on the roadmap, so that you can figure things out, so you can solve that customer problem for once and address the renewal rate. So again, I think focus on the problem that you're trying to solve for their business and let them know we can put this in an isolated environment, an air-gapped environment if you need to, if that's what will make you feel safe in order to test these things. Also, there is private AI that's out there, and boxes you can use. They're getting cheaper. That you can let them know of. Not everybody is looking at the latest, greatest thing like I am and are aware of all of these things, but those things are out there that they can access.
How much of the CFO's role is specific for an industry? For example, if I run product for a SaaS company, tomorrow I can't wake up and go and do a hard makeup product. Is the CFO's role similar, that you cannot just very interchangeably take your skills and manage finance for another organization in a completely different industry? And more importantly, the processes that you have and the data you have, would it make sense, like when I'm evaluating companies that are trying to help a chief financial officer or the finance team, that there is a chance of verticalization?
There's some. In general, finance is I would say 75 to 85% of finance and accounting is industry agnostic. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. You have to report the same, especially if you're thinking about like US GAAP rules, SEC rules, it's all the same. When you're talking about, though, what we were talking about before with the operations knowledge CFO, again, that is pretty specific. And in order to have that person that is going to be at the table with you making the company-wide strategic decisions, seen as that strategic thought partner, again, whether it's for go-to-market, whether it's for product roadmap, whether it's, again, for customer, you do need to have some type of industry knowledge.
But that's more the person who's sitting in the seat having the domain knowledge, and not as much data and processes for us to be building products that would help you.
Yes? Right. Yeah. Okay. I agree.
Awesome. I agree. So open to questions. Chetan?
Question.
Yes.
So you really opened the eyes of multi-front. So my question is on the future landscape of team building. When you are saying CFO role is overlapping with the COO and CPO and to some extent CFO, while core functionality is intact, like compliance and stuff like that. So does really all this title make sense for future building, or do you need to have a good spirited team? They collectively own the accountability and the responsibility. Just a wild question.
Just repeat the question.
Okay, so asking about titles and how much they mean versus, but you also asked about accountability too, which I think is important. So I do think everybody will have their area of expertise, that they're superpowers, right? What they are good at, and bring to that executive table. I think that a successful team is going to collaborate and going to leverage each person's superpowers and area of expertise. I do think that more and more, I see this with the CFO role and the CFO and COO role, just again, because it's about the operations of the business. I don't necessarily see that being with the CFO combining with the like chief product officer, for example. I don't see that happening. But really what the CFO has kind of been, because again, they're the stewards of the financials, which are ultimately the scorecard of the success of any company. You're evaluated, whether you're evaluated for investment or whether you're evaluated for exit, or acquisition, you're evaluated by those three financial statements. That is the first thing that anyone who's going to give you money is going to look at. And then they will look at all the other things. So being responsible for being accountable for all of that, but not necessarily being responsible for each number, again, has, I think, what has changed in the C-suite of the CFO, and why those two, especially the operations and the finances, have been combining. The work teams are different. But again, I think there's that inherent knowledge that's really needed in order to drive a successful company.
Yeah, Gopal.
So you talked about organizational structure.
Yes.
Obviously, in a startup, small company,
right,
it's easy.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that. But when you get to a medium to a large scale company, you're talking about strategy versus data versus AI versus governance.
Yes.
Do you see those roles within the CFO organization or outside the CFO organization?
I think it depends on the organization. And what the goals of that organization are. My personal experience, I usually come into a company at inflection points. So I'm brought in when a company is trying to change business models, whether they're building, whether they just raised a big round and, oh my gosh, how am I going to build all this out? Whether they're preparing for exit. So I'm usually there to drive big change, which is what I find fun and why they call me. So in situation, to answer your question, from my own experience, what tends to happen, and things might come under if they need focus. For example, we had an audit finding. Okay, well, governance or compliance might get wrapped under, so it can be reorganized or restructured, and then it might be spun back out into the organization. But I do believe, because again, in order to, I feel, and this is probably the recovering control freak in me, in order to be successful at my job, I need to understand all the things that I'm being held accountable for. And when I'm being held accountable for the finances, I want to understand what goes into all of those things. And so I will go deep in certain areas. Like I said, hire people that are way smarter than me so they can tell me what's the best practice here. But that's a very long answer to the short answer of it depends. And it depends on the individual situation and what the goals are for that company.
I'm curious to know more about your fractional roles. Like, at what stage does a company need a CFO? And can you get away with a fractional CFO, and how long can you get there? And at what point do you need a full-time CFO? And what is that? How does that evolution look?
So the short answer, I'll start with, unlike my last question, it depends. But I've worked with companies at all stages.
Yeah.
I'm even working with a seed stage where it was like, what? This is really early. But actually the main investor was like, can you work with my other companies now? He's like, I've never had so much visibility into what's happening at this company. I mean, I'm just a couple hours a week. It's not, it's not a whole lot of investment for me or for the company. But again, they have a small round. They want to be AI first with all the operations. And so I'm essentially helping them set up a really crisp, clean, clear structure so that when they do need somebody full-time at that point of maturity, they don't have to spend whoever that person will be in their full-time doesn't have to spend the whole first year cleaning everything up. And getting them on good practices. Plus, they're able to be a lot more capital efficient because they have somebody with my experience and expertise actually guiding them. I'm there doing the investor relations where the founder doesn't have to focus on memorizing all of the metrics. I've got the model built for them, and we're talking about pricing strategy and adjusting and, what resources do you need at what points in time. But again, that was really early, and I was kind of like, maybe I'll just advise, but it's really benefited And so much so that, like I said, even the investors like, can you work with some of our others, because we really need that clarity. And some of the other companies might have been running out of money, and they're like, we're gonna have to top them up, and and all of that. And so again, it depends. But at an early stage, what it really does is also gives a peace of mind to the founder, to have that strategic partner who does have the expertise that I have, to enable them to focus on, again, their zone of genius, their superpowers, and let somebody else be asking them those critical questions where it's not like everything's on the line. Like one of their investors is asking this, or one of their, customers is asking.
But at what point do you think a founder will need a full-time CFO?
Again, that depends. I think now, and especially with, with the advent of AI and the innovation, I think that you can probably stay pretty capitally efficient if you get a really good bookkeeper.
Right.
And then have somebody like myself that can be that strategy partner and help you figure out whether, you've got your North Star out there. Is the company staying on track to get to that North Star? And have the pricing discussion, or have the, again, like all of those financial conversations that really impact your business and your strategy with someone. You can keep going for a while. I would say, there's even companies that don't have a CFO till like Series C. And so it really depends. Although I will say, depending on what type of money you're raising in like a Series C, for example, or even a B, there might be some institutional investors that require you after a certain amount of money. Like, I'm not going to give you $20 million unless you have somebody who's dedicated to take care of
the oversight,
to take care of my $20 million.
Right.
So again, that's why I think it depends. But if you're bootstrapping, or if you've been able to get along a while without much, then yeah, I would try to automate as much as possible. Utilize the fractional folks. You can get a lot of times you can get people who are really experienced and really knowledgeable for a fraction of the cost, and then you don't have that headcount you're managing as well.
Got it. Yeah. Question, Faisal.
So in terms of usage-based models, right? So like
yes.
in AI, all you think basically outcome-based usage-based models. So in terms of both bookkeeping and projection, are there specific people who have more expertise in that, are there software stacks that are better at implementing usage-based models in terms of reporting? So right now, my hassle is it takes a lot of time to figure out stuff because it's not pure SaaS subscription, which was all my previous experience, but it's usage-based pricing. So like, are there people who have more expertise in that, both on the bookkeeping side and on the projection side?
So yes, and you can interview and ask for that as well. Again, really clear. So the bookkeeping is they're going to tell you what happened yesterday. They're going to tell you what happened last month. Anybody you want to be working with you, for example, to work on should we stay with the usage model, or maybe we should be, more to
on the historical side, for example, I just issued like, hey, Google paid us $250,000, but they haven't actually used it. It's like usage-based pricing. It's like, hey, this is $250,000 for X many things.
Okay.
And those X many things will materialize over the next 6 months.
Right.
So then,
so you need good reporting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, these are all things that you can ask. That'll probably be more than a bookkeeper will do, though, because a bookkeeper will report your financials. But again, what you're describing is, again, something that is right on that line. Is it operations or is it finance? Because it's operationalizing how your customer is utilizing the product and how you're reporting on it. So that's where, yes, you would probably need somebody that's a little bit more advanced from a bookkeeping perspective, but it also, you could use fractional operations people as well. They exist as well. So that can help you.
I have had to like literally fire two bookkeepers. I'm wondering if I'm doing something wrong. But is this a way?
I've got a good person I can recommend you to. Okay.
Over to you, Alina.
Can you speak from your point of view about how you made the decision to move to the fractional work over being a full-time CFO for companies?
How did you decide to move to fractional work from being full-time?
So it happened accidentally, and I love it. So after my last full-time role, a good friend of mine, actually two good friends of mine they had startups, and they're like, hey, while you're looking, can you just help out? And then somebody told somebody, hey, I know somebody. So it was literally like I was doing zero outreach, and I had just through my network, people reaching out, asking for help. And here I am. It's about 7 months later, and I've been able to, get a lot of clients from it, and I'm having a lot of fun. So I think I'm going to hang out here for a while.
And last question from Monica.
So in terms of CFO role, right? How the investments in AI are being tracked? Like what metrics are you looking for?
Well, so basically, the first one is just, are we getting any return on this? But the return could be in many different things. So you could have a return meaning cost savings. You could have a return meaning productivity improvements, freeing up time for people to actually do value-added work rather than doing the stuff that the technology can do. So then also to looking at it as revenue generation is another way that I'm looking at it.
Are there real correlation happening?
Is there a real correlation between AI and revenue generation?
It's mixed.
And cost cutting.
I think that we need a bigger data set. Like I said, there's so much, well, you all know this. There is so much out there, and it is literally improved. What's happening today was better than what happened yesterday. And we're getting so much, and everything's getting so much better. What I really think is important is that everybody's using it, playing with it in a controlled, safe environment, and that you're getting people to be comfortable with it. Because if your people are scared of it, they are not going to use it. If they don't know what to do with it, they are not going to use it. I think that one of the things also too that I even write about quite a bit is your people are your greatest asset actually in companies, and being able to bring them along on this journey and this change is going to be so critical. And to have that culture of innovation and experimentation and reward the curiosity is going to be so important. And the companies that embrace that are the companies that are going to take off. And because your people could come to you and tell you how you can best use the new AI tool, because they're the ones who have hands on keys, or they're the ones that are on the phone to the customers every day. And so you never know where the next great idea is going to come from. But if you don't create that environment to enable that, you're not going to see the cost reduction, the revenue generation, or the productivity improvements.
All right. So one principle you'd never compromise on. It's a rapid fire.
My integrity.
Your integrity. Overused buzzword in operations or finance.
Oh gosh. Buzzword. I don't know. I feel like everything's AI native.
Best advice you've received as a leader?
Make a decision.
Like
regardless of whether you feel like you're never going to have enough information. You make a decision today. You can make another decision tomorrow. Is basically
bias
what
for action.
Yes, definite bias for action.
The company you admire for execution.
So I have two. One from my origins, Intel. From an operational execution perspective, they were bar none. And I'm so glad I grew up in that. I think that's formed me throughout my career. And now a company I've been watching lately is ServiceNow. So I really respect what they're doing.
If not transformation work in finance, what would you be doing?
I do transformation work everywhere. It's just my core. I don't know. I'd be a rock star or something. I don't know. On a stage with a mic.
I think are you a fitness instructor or something? I forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to have my own fitness business. So that's actually when I was an entrepreneur, I had my own business. Got bit by the entrepreneurial bug. And yes, I had my own fitness business in Los Angeles. So if you're going to open a fitness, no, I sold it. Yeah, I sold it. So
but I remember talking to you, and you just like finished a half marathon or something. I don't remember.
Yes,
right?
I do. I run one half marathon every year. So
very commendable.
Keep myself fit.
Yeah, and you're a mother too, right? Of young kids. Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Phenomenal. Such an honor hosting you. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Mala.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I learned a lot. Thank you.